If you thought Duel monsters followed a set of fair, logical rules, think again. In Duelist Kingdom, the rules weren't broken by accident, they were built to be broken. The Duelist Kingdom rules differed in the anime and manga because they were intended to be more narrative driven and visually appealing than the real life card game. The rules were frequently simplified, modified, or even just made up as the story went, with dramatic moments taking priority over strict adherence and established mechanics. This resulted in a more free-form, theatrical experience in which anything could happen, even if it did not always make sense with the context of the established card game. Let's look at this in sense of the story. Pegasus designed this tournament's rule set for full spectacle and constant psychological pressure, shaping every match to entertain as much as it challenged. Today we're counting down 10 bizarre mechanics that made duels unpredictable. 2,000 life points starts, no tribute summoning, cards that change their effects on the fly, and even monsters attacking the moon. By the end of this video, you'll see how Pegasus used these quirks to create maximum drama, starting with a life total so low you could lose in just 2 turns. First up is the life total itself. In Duelist Kingdom, every player started with only 2,000 life points. Compare that to Battle City's 4,000 or the modern TCG's rules of 8,000, and you can just see how fragile that number really was. One solid hit could put you on the brink, forcing you to fight for survival from the very start. There was no space for slow setups, every draw, every summon, and every attack carried immediate stakes. With such a small cushion, Pegasus had a built-in way to keep matches short and decisive. If a risky play backfired, you could lose half your life points instantly. In Yugi's duel against Weevil, the anime's version of Mirror Force destroyed multiple monsters at once, and the resulting penalty damage nearly ended the game on the spot, despite the duel still being in its early turns. That's the kind of razor-thin margin where just one effect could swing the entire match. By setting life points so low, Pegasus ensured duels moved quickly, packed with momentum shifts, and ended before tension dropped. This wasn't about giving duelists time to grind out a win, it was a spectacle with constant pressure and high-impact gameplay from turn 1. And while surviving on 2,000 life points was already a challenge, Pegasus paired it with another dramatic rule change that made the field even more unpredictable. Let's just say, how you brought your monsters into play was nothing like the standard game. In Duelist Kingdom, getting your biggest monster onto the field didn't require any build-up at all. Players could normal summon monsters of any level without offering a tribute, meaning cards like Dark Magician or even Blue Eyes White Dragon could hit the field on turn 1 with 0 cost. No sacrificing weaker monsters, no setting up support. If it was in your hand, you could just place it straight down. In the standard game, this would completely destroy balance. High-level monsters are designed to be powerful because they're meant to be earned through careful plays. Here, a single early draw could swing the duel instantly, putting huge pressure on your opponent from the absolute beginning. Seeing a powerhouse appear immediately forced you to either answer it right away or risk losing within a couple of turns. And because there was no tribute system, you'd think many decks would just load upon big monsters instead of running low-level cards or throwing in the occasional spell or trap. But that's because flooding the board with huge monsters didn't mean you could instantly end the duel. You needed those low-level cards and you needed your spell and traps, because other Duelist Kingdom rules placed limits on how and when you could damage your opponent, and those restrictions could completely stall a would-be win. In Duelist Kingdom, even if your opponent's field was empty, you couldn't just attack their life points directly. The rule was explicit. Life points could only be reduced by attacking and defeating a monster. If no monsters were on their side, your attack did nothing until one appeared. This single restriction shifted every duel towards board control. Direct damage strategies and lightning-fast sweeps were impossible. Victory depended on breaking through whatever monster stood in your way. Every move was calculated to clear the defender first, knowing only then could real damage be dealt. However, Pegasus even exploited this rule for drama. With his Toon wildcard, his Toon monsters could bypass the restriction and strike life points directly, even with other monsters on the field. A rare exception that instantly raised the stakes and underlined his dominance as the tournament's host. So, by forcing players to fight past a wall before landing damage, duels naturally stretched out, creating more back and forth and giving each exchange extra weight. And because bringing down an opponent's monster was always the first step before dealing damage, the high tension moments often came when someone was finally about to clear the board. But in Duelist Kingdom, removing that wall didn't always mean you were in the clear. Sometimes destroying a monster wasn't the only way you could deal damage to your opponent. Sometimes in Duelist Kingdom, taking out an opponent's monster with an effect didn't just clear that threat from the board. They could still lose life points in the process. The rule worked like this. Destruction by card effect usually dealt damage equal to half the destroyed monster's attack, as seen with Mirror Force in Yugi's duel against Weevil. That blast cleared Weevil's entire attacking lineup, but still cost him a chunk of life points, even with no direct battle taking place. In rare cases, some anime-only effects like Jigen Bakudan could inflict the monster's full attack instead, making certain plays, well, outright dangerous. That rule turned safe, effect-based answers into high-risk plays in a 2,000 life point environment. You had to weigh what your opponent had on the field. Was summoning a big monster or calling an attack worth the risk of losing a quarter or even half of your starting total? This meant every move carried extra risk. Even the plays that would normally be considered safe could push you closer to defeat. And by keeping life totals swinging back and forth like that, Pegasus made sure nobody ever felt secure. The duel could flip at any moment and the tension stayed high from start to finish. And now, while effect damage kept the pressure on no matter how carefully you played, Duelist Kingdom had another twist. Sometimes, the field itself could turn the tide before you even touched an opponent's life points. During Duelist Kingdom, the battlefield wasn't just a flat mat. The island's terrain actively shaped the outcome of your duels. Certain locations acted like built-in power-ups, with field bonuses usually giving a sizable percentage boost. This is commonly shown as around 30% in the anime to the attack and defense of a specific monster type. This meant where you played could be just as important as what you played. Now, because these boosts could swing the numbers dramatically, a monster that would normally lose in a straight fight could suddenly overpower a stronger one. This kept everyone guessing. Since the usual mathematics went out the window when the terrain was in play, field effects sometimes even overrode spell boosts. The zone itself could matter more than an individual card. One standout example appeared in Yugi's duel against Meiko Tsunami. Meiko's ocean field not only boosted his water monsters, but let them hide beneath the waves, making them harder to counter and nearly unstoppable in battle. Yugi couldn't win head-on, so he had to attack the moon, destroying his own mystical moon card to alter the setting, causing the tides to recede and stripping Meiko's monsters of their advantage entirely. It showed how controlling the arena could decide a match as much as the cards themselves. For Pegasus, these environmental shifts added spectacle and unpredictability. But beyond power boosts, the tournament enforced another rule that shaped every duel, one that dictated exactly what had to stay on the field at all times. In the Duelist Kingdom tournament, players were bound by a strict rule. If you did not control a monster and couldn't summon one by the end of your turn, you automatically lost the duel. This wasn't just a quirky restriction, it existed to shut down stalling tactics that might otherwise drag the game out, especially given the no direct attack rule already in place. This condition forced constant board presence. You couldn't empty your field to wait for a better draw, and you couldn't buy time by leaving nothing for your opponent to target. Strategically, it meant you always had to commit something, whether it was your best card or a weaker placeholder. In many cases, it meant risking a low attack or situational monster you'd normally hold back, simply to avoid instant defeat. So, because at least one monster was always on the field, duels had a steady forward motion. There was never a turn where nothing happened. Every player's field offered a target, every attack produced a result, and every weak play carried real consequences. The pace stayed brisk, and it became much harder to stall until the perfect plan came together. By making sure the battlefield was never empty, Pegasus guaranteed constant tension in every turn cycle. But even with monsters locked in place and ready to fight, there was still another built-in restriction that slowed down how much you could actually do on offense in a single turn. That restriction was that only one monster could attack per turn in Duelist Kingdom. No matter how many you had already on the field, this hard cap was a deliberate break on offense. It completely shut down swarming tactics and kept explosive, fast wins off the table. For decks built around flooding the board, like My Valentine's Harpies, well, it stripped away their biggest advantage and forced them into slower, more deliberate play. With just one attack allowed, removing multiple monsters was always a multi-turn process. You had to think carefully about which threat to deal with first, knowing the others would survive until at least your next turn. Even Kaiba's field, filled with powerhouse monsters, couldn't bulldoze an opponent in one move. He still had to pick the single most meaningful target, making that choice as critical as the attack itself. This design gave duels room to breathe and stretched out the decision making. Being behind on the board didn't mean instant defeat. You could hold on long enough to find a counterplay, creating more opportunities for tense comebacks. And that tension was exactly what Pegasus was aiming for. Matches that stayed in the balance for multiple turns, each move carrying visible weight for the spectators. But while offense was capped like this, Pegasus introduced another twist on the defensive side. One that removed one of the core bluffing tools from the game entirely, changing how players read and prepared for what was coming next. During the tournament, most monsters placed in defense position had to be summoned face up, so your opponent saw their stats the instant they hit the field. Face down defense was technically allowed, but it was rarely used as a bluff. When it did appear, the anime often treated it as suspicious, prompting opponents to target or remove it immediately. That took away much of the hidden information players relied on in standard duels, where a set monster could disguise a high defense wall or a dangerous flip effect. Without that element of surprise, defense became entirely transparent. In normal play, you might tempt your opponent into attacking blindly, risking a costly misstep.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Here, they could read the board at a glance and make the safest choice without guessing. The moment you defended with a weak monster, your opponent knew if it was safe to attack or if they should hold back and set up a counter. You can see it in moments where a player tries to stall with a small defender, only for the opponent to instantly adjust and plan the perfect follow-up. Defensive summons here were less about being a trap and more about simply buying a turn. Pegasus wanted the audience to see the stakes, not wait for a flip to reveal them. Clarity on the board kept the visual drama front and center. But open information wasn't the only way these duels broke from the norm. Sometimes, even the cards themselves didn't follow a single fixed rule. Some Duelist Kingdom cards didn't have one consistent effect. They could work in entirely different ways depending on the duel. These changes weren't accidental inconsistencies. The anime treated cards like RPG abilities that the duelists or the plot could invoke when it made dramatic sense. Makyu the Magical Mist, for example, was shown doing wildly different things across duels, sometimes damaging monsters, other times altering the field entirely. Multiply went far beyond its token generating role in the real game, creating swarms of Kuribo far beyond official limits to stall or overwhelm opponents. And in one of the tournament's wildest plays, Yugi used Living Arrow with polymerization to fuse his mammoth graveyard to Kaiba's Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, causing it to decay over multiple turns. Something impossible in the actual rules, of course. Time Wizard also often acted as another flexible plot tool. aging monsters, destroying opponents' cards, or even transforming allies with effects far outside what its printed text would allow. Pegasus's Tomb World gave his monsters levels of battlefield immunity that lasted until the exact moment that the story decided they could be beaten. By allowing effects to shift and expand like this, the duels could turn on a single, unexpected play. Matches became less about the card text and more about whatever dramatic twist fit the moment, keeping viewers guessing how and when a turnaround might happen. And sometimes, it wasn't just the cards themselves that could rewrite the duel's direction, but the physical setting around them that became part of the strategy. In Duelist Kingdom, the arena itself could be used as part of your strategy. Players didn't just aim at monsters, they could attack, alter, or remove elements of the environment to gain an advantage. These interactions had direct effects on the duel's rules and pace, and they became some of the tournament's most memorable moments. One classic example was Yugi's Attack the Moon command, where his giant soldier of stone destroyed the full moon card, lowering the ocean and forcing Mako Tsunami's water monsters onto dry land. In Yugi's duel against Panic, Catapult Turtle launched Gaia the Dragon Champion to destroy the flotation ring holding up the Castle of Dark Illusions when Swords of Revealing Light expired. The castle collapsed onto the field, taking his monsters with it. Then there was the Paradox Brothers' use of Labyrinth Wall, which transformed the arena into a maze that monsters had to navigate physically, completely changing battle movement and positioning. These moments turned duels into set pieces, literal landscapes the duelists could fight over. And that theatricality was Pegasus's point. Every change to the battlefield added a visual hook for the audience and built tension by reshaping the duel in real time. By making the island's terrain and props into active gameplay elements, Pegasus ensured that no match was just card versus card. Each duel could feature a unique twist tied to where and how it was fought, reinforcing the idea that every strange rule or stage stunt had to be placed with a purpose. Every strange rule in Duelist Kingdom wasn't random. It was part of Pegasus's plan to make matches as entertaining and unpredictable as possible. From fast life point swings to monsters changing the battlefield, every mechanic kept players and viewers on the edge the whole time. Remember, the chaos was never a mistake. It's exactly what made Duelist Kingdom stand out and why it's still one of the most legendary arcs today. So, now that you know how the rules worked, or didn't, it's time to meet the monsters that made those duels unforgettable. Check out this video here on the strongest monsters in Duelist Kingdom for all the epic power plays. It's a great one. I'll see you over there. Till then, take care. Peace, peace!